20. Good evening. Welcome to the 22nd Annual Awards Dinner for the National Football Foundation and Hall of Fame.
The 1979 National Football Foundation Hall of Fame scholar athletes excelled in the classroom as well as on the football field and were campus leaders, and they include, back row left to right, Angelo Colosimo of Colgate University, Bruce Pilarski, University of the Pacific, Craig Jones, Virginia Military Institute, Ed Klabovies, University of Cincinnati, Jim Loughlin, Ohio State University, Ken Laushin, Purdue University. Front row left to right, Paul Brian McDonald, University of Southern California, All-America quarterback, Leon Shadowin, University of Kentucky, Stedman Shealy, University of Alabama, Thomas Strauss, University of Wisconsin, and James Tubbs, United States Air Force Academy.
Okay, we got it. Ready? This is Dick Kazmaier with Tom Scott, newly elected and about to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and the responder for the Hall of Famers tonight. Tom, I'm sure that this must be a very meaningful experience for you.
Yes, Dick, I think it's for all of us. As you know, we've been together for a day or so now, and the response and the camaraderie between all these men has been fantastic.
Well, do you have anything special that you're going to say this evening that you'd like to tell us?
Well, I just think that everybody's very rich in being a part of this thing, and basically I think they'll all feel it, and I believe that the Hall of Fame and the college football is one big fraternity.
Well, certainly Tom Scott and his record at the University of Virginia in later life is exemplary of what we like in the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you, Dick.
The National Football Foundation Hall of Fame's 1979 Hall of Fame is included in another great group. Back row left to right, Ed McGinley, University of Pennsylvania, Vernon Catfish Smith, University of Georgia, John Howard Vault, coach, University of Mississippi, Augie Leo, Georgetown University, Herman Wiedemeyer, St. Mary's College, California. Front row left to right, Dickie Meagle, Rice University, Tom Scott, University of Virginia, and Howard Hopcastle, Ohio State University. Missing from the picture, John Latham, Notre Dame, and Mike Hollaback, Boston College. Receiving the National Football Foundation's most coveted award this year is Admiral William P. Lawrence, the Superintendent of the United States Naval Academy. Making the presentation is Vincent DePaul Draddy, the Foundation's chairman of the board, who was the gold medal recipient a year ago. Admiral Lawrence was a three-sport letterman at Navy, and later he was a Navy fighter pilot, shot down in the Gulf of Tonkin during the Vietnam War. He was a prisoner of war for over 6 years. Today, he is the Superintendent of the United States Naval Academy. Admiral William P. Lawrence, the gold medal recipient, is shown with John Howard Vault, the Ole Miss coach, at right, and at left is Vernon Catfish Smith, University of Georgia's legendary inn, and the Foundation's chairman of the board, Vincent DePaul Draddy. The Foundation's two top award winners for 1979 include John W. Galbraith at left, recipient of the Distinguished American Award, and at right, Admiral William P. Lawrence, Superintendent of the Naval Academy, receives the gold medal. In the middle is the Foundation's chairman of the board, Vincent DePaul Draddy, who received the gold medal award last year.
Okay, on my far right, I have a very handsome young man called Bill Spencer, chairman of the, president of the City Corp, and a very good friend of mine. Next to him is John Galbraith. As you know, has got so many honors that it's hard to describe them all in less than 15 minutes. So I'll just tell you he owns the Pittsburgh Pirates and some very good racehorses. He's going to be our Distinguished American Award winner this evening. Next we have Admiral Lawrence, who's the Superintendent of the Naval Academy and who's been a great war hero, who was a prisoner of war for 6 years in Vietnam and has done an outstanding job, and he's going to get the gold medal award tonight. So we're very happy to have all these gentlemen here, and they're very good, nice guys, and we're delighted to be with them. You like to say a few words, Admiral?
Well, I just want to say what a great honor it is for me to receive this award. Football has always been a very important part of my life, and I can look back and see so many wonderful values that I derived from my days on the playing field that have helped me immeasurably in my adult years. It's a real honor. Thank you.
John?
Well, of course, you can't live in Columbus, Ohio, and not be a part of football.
That's right.
But it's great, and this is one of the greatest honors, certainly the greatest that I've ever had. I had good fun in baseball and racing, but this is it, and I'm so grateful.
Chris's emceeing has become a traditional part of these football dinners, and this, believe it or not, is his 11th year. You might think, if you give your fantasy a little fire, that he's the George Blanda of football dinners. Chris is well known to all of us, both through these dinners and through all of the times you've seen him on the tube, ABC, radio, and television. I think less well known, maybe, is the less known role that he plays behind the scenes. For example, very few people know it was Chris who said, "Roon, baby, why don't you get into news?" Or, "Barbara, you'll never make it in the locker room. Why don't you try interviewing foreigners?" Or to Howard, "If you could just switch from coloratura to baritone, I think there's a place for you in business." We at the Football Foundation, the Hall of Fame, have profited from Chris's splendid contributions over these many years, and I'm happy, once again, to turn the proceedings over to him. Chris Schenkel.
Thank you very much, Bill Spencer. Bishop McCarrick, distinguished gentlemen, for Glenn Osser and the band, the finest round of applause, please. Glenn, take a bow. And without the pipes of John Raitt every year, I think this great country, we wouldn't have a representative that you have been, John. Thank you very much. My role is the necessary evil. Like all announcers in television, they should shut up. We have a few at ABC that don't. I want to go back a few years because the first man that I have the pleasure of introducing will present the Hall of Fame folks around the ballroom tonight. And I had the pleasure of introducing him on many, many football telecasts. The Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, wherever the New York Giants went. And all the times that I've known him, he never once uttered the oratorical equivalent to a blocked punt. The legendary quarterback from the University of Notre Dame, Heisman Trophy winner, let's welcome him back to New York City, Johnny Lujack.
I think it's a generally recognized fact that Chris Schenkel did teach me all that I knew in broadcasting, but what hurts is that he didn't teach me all that he knew. Say, in years gone by, we've introduced the Hall of Famers alphabetically. We're going to change it this year. Tonight, they are seated in the order of seniority. So please withhold your applause until all of the members are introduced, and if we can draw your attention to the rear dais, we'll begin. He's got to be 92 years old, Hamilton Ham-Fish from Harvard, 1909. We can't stop you from applauding, but these next two guys are about the same age, I guess. From Yale in 1913, Hank Ketchum and Everett Bacon from Wesleyan in 1912. All right, we have to cut off the applause someplace or we'll be here all night, so we'd appreciate it if you'd hold the applause until they're all introduced. From Yale in 1921, Malcolm Aldrich. Hold your applause. From Illinois, 1921, Chuck Carney. Notre Dame, 1924, Rip Miller. Benny Friedman, Michigan, 1926. 1927, Dartmouth, Miles Lane. 1928, Georgia Tech, Henry Peter Pund. Ware Schoonover, 1929, Arkansas. And under the St. Mary's banner up here, someplace to the right, Marchie Schwartz, Notre Dame, 1931. Frank Norty Hoffman, Notre Dame, 1931. Washington University and Army, 1933, General Harvey Yabo Yablonsky. Someone told me tonight they can remember him when he was a captain. SMU, 1935, Robert Wilson. 1936, University of Pittsburgh, Averill Daniel, Big Av. Larry Kelly, Yale, 1936. Here's a guy you pat on the back, you take a chance of getting hurt. Clark Hinkle, Bucknell, 1931. From Ohio State, 1937, Gus Zarnes. Holy Cross, 1938. One of the Irishmen there, Bill Osmanski. 1938, from Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, Marshall Goldberg. 1938, Michigan State, Johnny Pingle. One of my teammates with the Bears, Louisiana State, 1939, Ken Cavanaugh. Ohio State, 1941, Jim Daniel. 1941, Harvard, Endicott Chubb Peabody. Alabama, 1942, Admiral Don Whitmire. Notre Dame in 1943, Angelo Bert Bertelli. (1943) Northwestern, Otto Graham. 1943, Notre Dame, George Connor. 1947, Zygmunt Peter Zarobsky. One of the great favorites here in New York always, 1947, Mississippi, Chuck Connerly. University of Pennsylvania, 1950, Reds Bagnell. Teammate of Connerly's, SMU, 1950, Kyle Rote. Head coach at Southwestern, head coach at Clemson, head coach at Rice, Jess Neely. Head coach at Brown, head coach at Penn State, Rip Angles. Now that's the end of the introductions in the back dais, but now at individual tables, if you can call your attention to table number 217, Bill Dudley from the University of Virginia, 1941. Table 225, Bob McLeod from Dartmouth, 38. 1946, University of Georgia, Bobby Davis at table 201. Now if we can draw your attention to the head table. My seatmate over there, Bill Morton from Dartmouth, 1931. Dick Kazmaier, Princeton, 1951. 1937, Yale, Clint Frank. 1938, from Cornell, Jerome Brud Holland. And finally, from Alabama, 1930, Fred Sinkton. There we go. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Johnny Lujak, gentlemen. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, gentlemen, for making this audience something very special. The president of the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame is Princeton's incredible winner of the Heisman and Maxwell trophies, and as Johnny mentioned a moment ago, Player of the Year in 1951. For a presidential report, Richard W. Dick Kazmaier. Let's greet him.
I don't mean that all of you are completely happy with the results turned in by your favorite school, but it is apparent that by all visible measures of success, they read most favorably. Hear that, Admiral Lawrence? NCAA statistics show that the number of colleges fielding teams is at a 30-year high. Attendance has increased once again, with over 35 million people watching college games. And particularly with television, is football and its benefits to those colleges who sponsor teams most dramatic, with fees of all sorts paid for the regular season at over $30 million. Certainly football at this level is healthy and prosperous. And other than the economic concern over the interpretation of Title IX's equal funding for women's sports, there are not really many major issues or problems that can't be handled by continued application by the many leaders and administrators responsible for the sport. In the high schools, football continues to lead all sports in participants, with over 50% more than the next most popular sport. Well over 13,000 schools sponsor a football program, and just under 1 million students play. In a high school, perhaps 1 out of 5 students participate directly or indirectly in what is related to football. Particularly in producing revenues for the athletic department, does football lead the way at this level. Gate receipts and related income produce the most significant portion of the non-taxpayer allocated funds for all sports programs. While football at this level is healthy, there are outside forces in addition to Title IX that do pose a real concern. Inflation, increasing costs for most equipment and services, and the taxpayers' revolt, as expressed by Proposition 13, are working to squeeze the budgets for football programs. Longer term, non-taxpayer related means of funding secondary school sports programs are going to have to be found, as they have been at the college level, with television particularly. At the youth level, football is eroding in popularity and in participants. This has been the level with the greatest number of participants of the some 2.5 million total that play the sport. While there are no readily available statistics, it is apparent that the high costs of fielding a youth team, where the parent pays the tab, coupled with an increasing concern over injuries, whether well-founded or not, and the availability of alternative youth sports, such as the very rapidly growing soccer programs around the country, all these factors add up to significant difficulties for football at the beginning level. Some of the outside forces affecting amateur football are really beyond the control of the thousands of capable men who are responsible for the game. But it is comforting to know that because of the efforts of those who are involved and care, the problems are not being ignored wherever they exist. The National Football Foundation is impressed with the dedication and efforts of the men who work with the nation's #1 sport. And we continue to be supportive and want to be as helpful as we can with our role of promoting the best interests of amateur football. This dinner, that all of you support so willingly and generously, is a highlight of our efforts. The College Football Hall of Fame has been open over a year and is beginning to fulfill its role as the focal point for all the best of amateur football. Attendance during the first full year exceeded 80,000 and was the most successful start ever for a Hall of Fame. These men being inducted tonight will join the already enshrined, and we encourage all of you to visit this beautiful facility at Kings Island, Ohio, if you haven't already been there. It is a most worthwhile experience, so we're told, by most everyone. And our friends from the Taft Broadcasting Company deserve many thanks for their continued contribution to this facility's success. The Hall of Fame Bowl in Birmingham is going to be played for the third year on December 29th with South Carolina and Missouri, this year's participants. Our friends in Birmingham are working very hard to build this game into a meaningful and valuable contributor to the promotion of the Hall of Fame and this foundation's well-being. Underlying the real meaning of all of our activities is a scholar-athlete program. The 11 young men here tonight, once again, are outstanding examples of football at its finest. Our chapters are honoring hundreds of high school seniors each year. And wherever this takes place, we feel the game benefits greatly. We wish there were more of these award programs in every major population area of this country, and we are working to bring this about. In concluding, I'd like to tell you that Vin Draddy, our chairman, and all the officers and board members are dedicated to providing an atmosphere of positive thoughts and feelings for football. We feel we have made progress. We know we have much more to do. We know there is much more required based on the conditions facing some of the levels of the game. Your support is appreciated tonight, and in whatever other ways you can help our efforts. We thank you for being with us for what we hope is another memorable evening in the glow of football's finest hour.
Super job, Dick Kazmaier. I heard the dinner chairman, Bill Spencer, earlier talking to this graduate from the University of Iowa who is next up, because you'll know if you've come to these dinners often enough, this is the point of the program where we have light, L-I-G-H-T, remarks. And I heard Bill Spencer say, listen, buddy, you better be good. I know this, that he has given light moments in all 50 states. That should be testimony enough. So from the University of Iowa, and now out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I'm proud to introduce Mr. Richard Jackman. Dick?
Thank you, Chris, and be of good courage. I've gotten my instructions to get you back to the bar and or the bathroom, whichever is your most pressing concern. Now, I've been sitting up here tonight eating this meal prepared by the low bidder and sitting among these giants of industry and sports and education and the clergy. And one thought keeps surfacing in my mind, and it's 30 seconds of humility. This will be the only humility of the entire evening, so grasp it. Here it is. No matter how important you are or how successful you become in this lifetime, remember the weather will still determine the size of your funeral. That's it. Winston Churchill went to a British countryside home to have dinner, and they came around offering him chicken and asked him what he would prefer. And he said, I would like a breast. And the very sophisticated lady of the house said, Mr. Churchill, in this house we refer to it as white meat and dark meat. And Mr. Churchill the next day sent her a thank you note, and he included a corsage. And in the note he said, you would do me great honor if you would pin this on your white meat. See? Mr. Churchill, of course, represents to a lot of us in the world and to many of us here tonight an element of leadership. And in this room we are gifted tonight to have an accumulation of well over 50,000 years of leadership, not only on the gridiron, but in business and all the other places. And as we stand here 27 days away from the 1980s, wondering whether America's future will be determined by chance or by choice, it is comforting to know that we have all around us plenty of leadership examples right in this room. For example, we have the clergy in this room, and that's helpful. I've been sitting next to the bishop tonight. A priest, a minister, a rabbi walked down the street. A fairy godmother said, each of you can have any wish in the world that you would like. And they turned to the priest and said, what's your wish? He said, I wish there weren't any more Protestants on the face of the earth. And they turned to the minister, they said, what's your wish? He said, I wish there weren't any more Catholics on the face of the earth. They turned to the rabbi, they said, what's your wish? He said, oh, forget about me, just take care of my friends here, see? Well, the business of leadership and the business of people is the business of taking care of your friends. Minister knew everything there was to know about the Bible, not a word, not a phrase, not an incident that you could bring up, that this minister did not know how to instantly refer to the proper passage in the Bible to justify that word, that phrase, that incident. And two of his friends who grew up with him tried all their lives to stump him, but they failed, until they came up with a word they were sure would do it. They wrote the word out on a sheet of paper, handed it to the minister, and he said, no, let's be fair here. He said, I don't want to look at that word. I'll put that paper in my Bible on Sunday. I will open it in front of the full congregation, take it out, look at it for the very first time, and instantly relate to the proper passage in the Bible. And Sunday came, and his two friends in very uncustomary position were seated down front of the congregation. Minister's in the pulpit. He opened the Bible, took out the sheet of paper. Across it was written one word. The word was constipation. Without hesitation, he flipped to another part of the Bible. He ran his finger down the page and he read, and Moses took 2 tablets and went out into the wilderness. See? Now, if we do not find enough leadership from clergy, then we should be comforted to know that tonight we can turn to business for leadership, because we have some fantastic business leaders in the room. Businessman had a terrible problem with the 7-year-old boy and a 6-year-old boy who had the terrible swearing habit. He went to the psychiatrist. Psychiatrist says, save your money. The next time one of them swears in front of the other one, react quickly. Back of your hand across his mouth, you'll cure them both. Next morning they come down to breakfast, turned to the 7-year-old and said, what would you like for breakfast? He said, oh, give me some of those damn cornflakes. And right away he let him have it, back of his hand across his mouth. But he did it with such energy, he knocked him out of his chair, over into the corner, into a rather unhappy little pile. Now the 6-year-old sitting there, his eyes are bulging at all this violence. And his dad turned and said, and what would you like for breakfast? He said, I'm sure as hell not going to ask for cornflakes. See? So fortunately, we also have business leadership. And finally tonight, if we want to turn to leadership, we can always turn to government for leadership. I was in Washington today. You'll be pleased to know that Congress is back and working, and I don't want to go too far. Congress is back. A lot of you didn't know they were away, and that's probably part of our problem. They were away on their 10-day Thanksgiving recess, which they needed because they had been working for 3.5 weeks consecutively since returning from their 10-day Columbus Day recess. And there are a lot of Americans who say they do not understand why Congress takes 10 days off to honor Christopher Columbus, but fortunately you do and I do. We sympathize with that. They identify with Columbus. When he started out, he didn't know where he was going. And he got there, he didn't know where he was, and got home, he couldn't say where he'd been. And he did it all on somebody else's money, so there's a certain identification. Now, don't misinterpret that, please. I don't knock government. Government's been very important in my life. It taught me how to think big. I grew up in a small farm in northwest Iowa, near a very small town. Our principal industry was jury duty, as I recall, and on our farm, we did not have the benefit of indoor bathroom facilities until I was 15 years old. During the winter months, that taught us a great deal about biological discipline, which was to prove invaluable in later years for sitting through Hall of Fame dinners throughout the country. This was the late 30s and the early 40s, and I was watching my dad farm, and I was helping him farm, and we were not farming very well. In fact, we were about ready to fold up farming, until the government came along with a very timely program which they announced to pay farmers for not farming. Well, right away, that captured our attention. And the first phase of this program was to pay us for not raising hogs. We looked at that and we said, we can handle that. So we assessed our capabilities, and we made a determination in that first year that we could not raise 400 hogs. And we did this. And we did it well. So well, at the end of the first year, the government sent us a check for $4,000. Now, in the second year, based on this accelerated learning curve, we decided to expand. It was time to grow, and we made a commitment to not raise 800 hogs. But you know, this never did work out too well. We had a lot of problems. We had a lot of applications to fill out. The paperwork kind of backed up on us. It was a case of trying to grow too big too soon. Well, there is no way in tonight's agenda, in the future agenda of football, in the future agenda of America, that we can grow too big too soon in a simple agenda that faces us all, in and out of our families, in and out of our homes, in and out of our communities, and that agenda is to help those we love and care about, 220 million Americans and 4 billion people who walk this planet, to enjoy two simple basic human rights tomorrow morning. Number one, everyone ought to be able to be proud of what they are on the 5th of December, and secondly, they ought to be able to be aware of what they can be. Proud of what you are, aware of what you can be. Very difficult to do because we do strange things to each other. We took a survey of an employee cafeteria. 2 complaints dominated the results of that survey. The first complaint was that the food wasn't any good. Second complaint was that the portions were too small. Now, you take that kind of reasoning, and you got a clientele that says the food is lousy and we want more of it, and you begin to appreciate the problems of getting a positive response from human beings. No, that positive response requires something extra. We had a teenage neighbor back home, a young fella. He got home at midnight. His mother said, "Where have you been?" He said, "I was out with my girl." His mother said, "I ought to give you a whipping staying out so late. But you're honest with me. I admire your honesty. Have some cookies and go to bed." Next night, the kid's home at 1 a.m. His mother said, "Where were you tonight?" He said, "Same place, out with my girl." His mother said, "I ought to give you the whipping of your life, but you're honest with me. Have some more cookies and go to bed." Next night, the kid's home at 2 a.m. His father is waiting up for him. As he walked in the house, the father picked up a huge frying pan. He turned to face the kid. The mother leaped to her feet. She screamed. She said, "Don't hit him, don't hit him." The father said, "Who's going to hit him? I'm going to fry him some eggs. He can't keep this up on cookies." See? So good people, if you're having difficulty keeping up the pace with human beings on Tuesday on cookies, let me encourage you to fry some eggs on Wednesday. The kind of eggs we encourage you to fry are those creative eggs that make other people feel better about themselves. Please be guided by that wonderful sign in front of the church. It said, "Sunday sermon, do you know what hell is really like?" And right underneath it, it said, "Come in and hear our choir." Well, the choir's out there, and the choir is singing, and the song they're singing is a very simple one tomorrow morning. The song is, "See me and hear me and care about me and love me." I have had the pleasure in the last dozen years of speaking in all 50 states and a dozen foreign countries. Do you know in all that time and all that geography, I've only met 2 kinds of people. American people and those who would like to be. That's far enough. Good night. Thank you.
Dick Jackman. Dick, I think you made it in the Fun City. You've succeeded at the Big Apple. Congratulations. Refreshing to know a public relation executive has a sense of humor. Thank you very much. All right, on the dais, on our many, many tiers, there are distinguished gentlemen who are not taking part in the program or have not been introduced before. So I'd like to quickly have you salute them. And you don't have to hold your applause. It'll go just as quickly, because it gets very silent if you don't. First of all, way at the top, here's the gentleman, Vice Chairman of the Awards Committee, the Foundation, Princeton alumnus, Judge Arthur S. Lane. Honorary Director, Chemical Bank, Princeton, Harold H. Helm. Chairman of the Board of Tiffany & Company was here, Walter Hoving, but he had to leave. The Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Economic Development Council, great friend of the Foundation, Dartmouth, George Champion. Bill Gilbane of Gilbane Construction was here. He has gone too. Now, the president of the Football Writers Association of America, Notre Dame graduate from South Bend, Indiana, Joe Doyle. Joe? President of the Tri-County Chapter Foundation and Hall of Fame from the West Coast, Anthony Capps. General Manager of the College Football Hall of Fame, Kings Point, which Dick referred to a few moments ago, Mr. Paul Ritter from Thomas More College. From the Downtown Athletic Club of New York, and they're proud of the people that voted Charles White in this year, from the University of Notre Dame, Richard Deegan. Dick? Now we go to the third row. Chairman, Allegheny Corporation, Fred M. Kirby. Mr. Kirby? Secretary of the National Football Foundation and Hall of Fame, Springfield College, Scotty Whitelaw. And we skip a few gold medal recipients in the past and go to the man that I'm sure appreciated, Dick Jackman, who has been in every spectrum of the entertainment business, including sports. President of Madison Square Garden, pride and joy of Rutgers University, David Sonny Werblin. Now we get to that wonderful, wonderful realm of television. The president of CBS Sports, New York University alumnus, veteran at that great network, Frank Smith, Jr. Frank? The president of NBC Sports, Fordham University, Arthur A. Watson. Member of the board of directors, and he clocks a few miles. I think he writes for Runner magazine because he's on the move and he does a lot of help on these dinners in particular. Long a member of the board of directors of the foundation. Yale University, Robert A. Hall. And now to my left, to your right, by the lectern, Dick Kazmaier talked about the College Hall of Fame, Kings Point. I had the pleasure of being there to emcee the dedication of it. I had done the dedication of the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Impressed by that, very impressed by the Kings Point building and all that went into it. Charles S. Meacham, chairman of Taft Broadcasting, had so much to do and working so closely with the foundation. So as we welcome him back from Cincinnati, I think it should be loud and long. Charles Meacham. Now to pay respect and announce the 1979 deceased Hall of Fame electees. I'm proud to present a former Miami of Ohio football star, former Naval Air fighter pilot under Admiral Tom Hamilton, the Executive Vice President of Coca-Cola Bottling Company of New York City, William, they call him Big Bill Pierce. Bill?
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm sure that all my friends out at the Coca-Cola table will be pleased to know that I've been promoted to Executive Vice President. Gentlemen, it is my privilege to announce to you that during the 1979 college football season, 3 great players and 1 outstanding coach were posthumously inducted into the National Football Foundation College Football Hall of Fame in special on-campus inductions. They included Coach Orrin Babe Hollingsbury of Washington State University, who led the Cougars to their only Pacific Coast Conference title. His one-loss record was particularly outstanding in view of the tough Pacific Coast Conference during 17 years of competition. He was one of the original coaches in the East-West Shrine game. He now joins 2 of his greatest players, Turk Edwards and Mel Hine, in the College Football Hall of Fame. Coach Hollingsbury died in 1974. Ernest Davis, Syracuse University, 1959-1961. Ernie Davis was the first black athlete to win the Heisman Trophy. He was a standout sophomore on the national champion 1959 Syracuse team, which was unbeaten and untied and defeated the Texas Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl game. In 29 regular seasons, Ernie carried the football 360 times for 2,386 yards, averaging 6.8 yards per try. He scored 35 touchdowns and 5 two-point conversions for a total of 220 points. Ernie Davis died of leukemia at the age of 24. Dr. Joseph C. Donchis, University of Pittsburgh, 1927-1929. Joe Donchis left school in the 5th grade to go to work in a steel mill. 5 years later, an alumnus of Wyoming Seminary discovered Joe and sent him to that famous prep school. Endowed with a natural gift for learning, Joe made up 3 grammar grades in 1 year and rapidly earned scholastic as well as athletic distinction. At Pittsburgh, he earned varsity letters for 3 seasons, winning All-American honors as a sophomore, a junior, and a senior. He also played in 2 Rose Bowl games for Jock Sutherland's Panthers. He later served as an assistant coach to Sutherland at Pittsburgh and to Red Blake at Dartmouth. In 1937, he became assistant chief surgeon of the United States Steel Corporation and chief surgeon in 1943, a position he held until his retirement in 1965. Joe passed away in 1977. Ernest Pug Retner, Northwestern, halfback, 1929-1931. A 2-time All-American, Pug Retner came into his own as a junior and quickly was recognized as one of the best broken field runners in the Midwest and one of the Wildcats' all-time greats. In nearly every varsity game he played, he reeled off long runs either from scrimmage, kickoff, punt returns, or pass interception. Pug Retner was recognized as one of the best passers of his day. He enlisted in the Navy the day after Pearl Harbor, and following his discharge after the war, he entered the insurance business. He was named to Northwestern's all-time All-American team. He died in 1978. Gentlemen, 3 truly great football players and 1 outstanding coach and all great Americans. Thank you.
Johnny Lujack and I learned way back at CBS that if you make a mistake, admit it, give yourself a 5-yard penalty, occasionally 15. Well, I blew one up here on the desk. I guess I was frightened by the law firm he is a part of. Reuben, Baum, Levin, Constant, and Friedman. But anyways, a graduate of NYU. How could I ever forget George Weiss? George, I'm sorry. Time now for the Distinguished American Award. And your foundation's dinner chairman, former Colorado College football player, renowned, and I underline renowned, hunter and fisherman from his native Rockies, president of Citibank. And I think it's a good time to applaud your dinner chairman, who again has done a super job. May I present Mr. Bill Spencer. Bill?
Peace. I'm signally honored tonight to present our guest of honor, my friend, John Galbraith, builder and sportsman. The buildings and towns that John has constructed in the past 45 years ring the world, reaching even to that remote island that we call Manhattan. He built One Liberty Plaza, the winner of the Architectural Excellence Award, the Continental Can Building over on 3rd Avenue, and the Mobil Oil Building, which is quite near here. I'd say just a stone's throw away, but with all the energy here, I think that might be regarded as reasonably provocative. If you were to stack all the office buildings John's built on top of one another, they'd be roughly 5 times as tall as the World Trade Center and a serious hazard to air navigation. He's also built 43 complete town sites. Perhaps the most ambitious, at least the one that I know of, because we were part of it, was the whole town in Kowloon, overlooking Hong Kong Harbor, that houses and provides all of the amenities for a population of 80,000 souls. Nor is he really ready, at the age of 82, to start taking it easy. The current talk is that he's planning a lot of new construction in Saudi Arabia and the People's Republic of China. He's come a long way, actually, for a third baseman on the Mount Sterling, Ohio high school baseball team. He's taken his boyhood love of competition and sport, and he's applied it to a whole variety of new sports. His Darby Dan farm has produced thoroughbreds that have won the Kentucky Derby twice, and the Epsom Derby, making him, you, Mr. Galbraith, the only person in racing with the most prestigious trophies on both sides of the Atlantic. And as the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates, his thrill at winning their World Series was still fresh when his favorite Ohio State football team snatched victory, and I use the word snatch, from the arch rival Michigan and headed for the Rose Bowl. What about now, John? As we all know, John's been a supporter, a grand supporter, from day one through some vicissitudes of the Football Hall of Fame and Foundation since its very earliest times. He's an ardent booster of his hometown town of Columbus. In fact, his enthusiasm is so strong that it flows to all of the 15 cities and towns that are named Columbus in the United States. Every Columbus Day, he invites a prominent dignitary from all 15 of these Columbuses to the Darby Dan farm, and it's a tribute to John's discriminating taste that the dignitaries that he usually assembles from these places are the current Miss Columbuses. It's obviously that he has an affinity for fast horses and other winners. I'm told, I can't attest to this, but I'm told that the Queen of England sends her mares to visit the Darby Dan farm each year, but there's certainly no connection between the two of them, I know. He's an aggressive person in a sportsman's sense. He travels for whatever game he's after, to Scotland for grouse, to Canada for salmon, to Cincinnati for Grater's double chocolate chip ice cream. If one word describes John Galbraith, he's a builder. He's a builder of towns, builder of buildings, he's a builder of winning teams. But most important, throughout his whole life, he's been a builder of the human spirit. And on behalf of the National Football Foundation and Hall of Fame, I take great pride in presenting John W. Galbraith, Distinguished American. John Galbraith.
Who had a dirty shirt? Bill, Chairman Dratty, President Dick Kazmaier, members of the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame, scholar athletes, and distinguished guests. I certainly consider myself a very fortunate man to be here tonight. As Bill said to you, I have had the privilege of winning a couple of Kentucky Derbies. And I've had my best suits splattered with champagne in the locker room of the World Series Pittsburgh champions. But the thrill and excitement I feel at this moment has never been and never will be equaled. This is it. In my opinion, this is annually the greatest party in all New York. Through the efforts and dedication of Chairman Draddy and the President, Bill Morton, Bill Spencer, Jim McDowell, Bob Hall, and many, many others, this has become one of the really, truly great parties held anywhere. And fortunately, and for all of us, it has to do with the great sport of baseball. It was so... I did that on purpose. I'm surprised that there aren't more of you awake, but you see what I got on my mind, don't you? No, gentlemen, I really mean this. It is great, and I really salute all you gentlemen connected with the Football Foundation Hall of Fame for the work you do year after year and year after year to make this a great party, and what you do for the young people of our country who are interested in athletics is outstanding, as much so as anything that I know of that happens in this country. Tonight, I'm accepting an award that I'll cherish more than anyone can possibly imagine. I'm standing in the footprints of the likes of General Van Fleet, Archibald McLeish, Dr. Jerome Holland, Reverend Asberg, Bob Hope, Vince Lombardi, Captain William Carpenter, and Reverend Joyce. Believe me, to be put in context with that group is enough to bring a person like me to my knees. Every week, in the fall of the year, millions of Americans find their way into hundreds of stadiums from the Carolinas to California, from North Dakota to Nevada. They go to watch the reinvention of football week after week and season after season. I use the term reinvention because, after all, none of those loyal fans who are going to see last week's game, they're going to see this week's game because it will be different. The opposition will be different. The challenge will be new. Each game is approached with a different slant. A game of football is really that, isn't it? Meeting the new challenge, never taking next week for granted, or for that matter, not even the next play. Now, some folks could say that about sports in general, and maybe they'd be right, but football is different. That's what fascinates me about it and has for 50 years. When we relate football to business, to success, and to life, the parallels are astounding. We don't even have to be preoccupied with winning to take a lesson or two from a 60-minute head-to-head, shoulder-to-shoulder, and above all, mind-to-mind confrontation between 22 spirited and dedicated young men. A confrontation that produces all the byproducts of commitment, bruises, cheers, joy, a confrontation that produces all of these things, and disappointment along with the rest of them. And as the men on the field must play by the rules, we must work and live by the rules of fair play in business and in life. And I grant you, we all may have been called for a minor infraction of the rules from time to time, and maybe a little holding or an encroachment upon the neutral zone. However, the older we get, the more difficult it is to be called for backfield in motion. We don't get the ball off quite as fast as we once did, but we drive, and we try, and we dedicate ourselves totally. We're all together this evening with the belief that football is a great sport, and in my opinion, and I probably shouldn't say this in light of what's just happened, but probably the greatest of all sports on the campuses of our great universities. It's a sport that can prove the mettle of men. A game, because it's very structured, demands physical and mental courage just to play it, let alone to be successful at it. Young football players of today are challenged to grow as never before. Our universities offer the best in scholastic opportunities they ever have. And yet the game of football helps mold a character, an ethic that is so important in today's competitive world. A world in which it seems like every down is third down in long yardage. And as these men know all too well from their experience down on the gridiron, you don't convert them all, but you still commit, you try, and you dedicate. They learn to believe in themselves, which is so important. And they believe that they're going to win. And they learn that sometimes adversity is the greatest single step to success. That brings to my mind that what Emerson once said, and I've told it many times because I so thoroughly believe in it, and I know you young men believe in it. Don't ever despair. But if you do despair, work on in despair. The game of football is teaching that. And then I like to spin off a well-known football quotation, winning isn't everything. But I say it's the only thing. Well, what if you lose? You could be one game or a season, but as long as you keep trying, as long as you continue to gain inspiration from the challenge, there'll always be another game and another season. Well, gentlemen, I talked to you a little bit about football. What is it teaching young people who play the game? What is teaching the young people who play the game? But what does all that really mean to the majority of us in this hall this evening? Well, as many of you sit up there in the stands on a crisp Saturday afternoon and you see the intensity and you hear the pads and the helmets popping, and you're probably saying to yourself, it kind of sounds like Monday morning in the office. Only our equipment isn't quite as good as that. Well, some of our future's down there on that playing field. These fellas are packing into 100 yards everything we'll need in the next 100 years and the next 100 years. We'll have these young people to work with, to compete with, and we'll certainly be all the better off for it. They'll know that every day is a new day, just as for them now, every game is a new game, and that they can never rest on yesterday's success, and they will continue to work. Gentlemen, if there's a shortage of anything in this great country of ours, it's not in the area of opportunities. We just need to be sure that the desire to work towards achievement is always there. After all, if you can boil down the American way into just a few words, and football dramatizes more than anything I know, is the will to win. Gentlemen, I'm humbled by the honor you awarded me this evening. I can't really express to you my great love for this great organization and the great game of football. And I would like to close my few remarks by quoting from Norman Vincent Peale, who once said, "Your reach should exceed your grasp." Well, what's the heaven for? Thank you very much.
John Galbraith, gentlemen. I know in his thoroughbred racing achievements, proud of progeny, but John Galbraith is proudest of another progeny, and he's here tonight. He's a chip off the block. His son, Dan Galbraith. Dan, will you stand and take a bow, please? Right down here. Also, someone in the audience that I've had the pleasure of following for years, as John has made a tremendous contribution to Ohio State University. And he was here to see John receive the Distinguished American Award. How about a round of applause for Mr. Woody Hayes?